open the board meeting formally. We're going to take a roll call vote to open the meeting. And we're going to start with John Ketchum.
John Ketchum, aye.
Elizabeth Harding.
Elizabeth Harder, aye.
Bob Doan.
Bob Doan, aye.
Joe McFarland.
Joe McFarland here.
Kathy Green.
Green, aye.
Donna Kelnick.
Donna Kalanick, aye.
Mary Mazowski.
Mary Mazowski, aye.
And David Nixon, aye. Jan, would you be so kind to read the governor's message?
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GL section or C30A section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Community Preservation Committee on Friday, May 7, 2021 at 6 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend the meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: on channel 18, or by watching the simulcast at http://harwich18-dynds.org/public/capital L for live /ASPX ? Channel ID = 1. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the Town of Harwich's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. That's it.
Thank you very much, Jan. Okay, I'd like to open the meeting to the general public.
Dave, 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to bother you, but if Bob Doan can just mute his mic, then you can hear the speaker a lot better, even though it's just one person.
Bob, did you hear that request? Okay. Is there anybody in the general public that would like to speak? Hearing none, we're moving on. All right. The reason for this meeting tonight is to discuss Article 33 that's going to go before town meeting, tomorrow morning's town meeting. And I'm going to lead this particular discussion first. The article that was written by the town says that it's an appropriation from the Community Preservation Act funds of $360,000 from open space to find and the acquisition of a parcel of land located on Headwaters Drive and identified in the Census Map 81G. The article continues on where it says, needed the requirements of GLC 44B 12A with the care, custody, and control of said parcel to be held by the Board of Selectmen in pursuant with provisions of General Law C-40 and 8C. That was in addition to what the motion was originally from the CPC. In the CPC, the motion was, and it was made by Mary Moskowski and seconded by Kathy Green, to approve $360,000 from the FY22 open space account to fund the Hickley's watershed preservation project. So there was quite a bit of language that was added to that motion, and the motion wasn't voted on by the CPC. The original motion was. That's the first part. The second part is the actual property itself. When I was brought into an executive session meeting with the Board of Selectmen, there was a lot of information that was provided that I was unaware of. So I can't relay any of those details because it was an executive session. What I can say is I started looking up some information after the fact. So I went to the assessor's office. I pulled the documents from the assessor's office, and I came to find that there's an agricultural restriction on that property. And I found that interesting because the way everything was formatted from previous discussions that weren't executive session, the information was that if the CPC did not vote this, did not approve this particular parcel, that residential and commercial properties, it would be sold for that use, for development of residential or commercial use. And I went further into it, and I went to the DOR, and I downloaded their procedure for Chapter 61, 61A, 61B, the right of first refusal for the town. Before, I believe in the minutes, you'll find that there was a reference to a P&S purchase and sale agreement that was made to the town. I hadn't heard from the town whether or not the town had exercised its right of first refusal under that agreement. Because that agricultural lien, as some of you know, provides a certain amount of tax. I don't know quite how to put it, but it's a taxation that is less than the normal commercial or regular property owners would have. And because of that agricultural property, the town, if it gets sold in any way, shape, or form, the town has the right of first refusal. And under the guidelines of DOR, the town must act to receive its to exercise its option to purchase the property within 120 days from receiving the notice. It's not clear to me whether or not there's been a notice sent. Certainly, I don't believe the CPC has heard anything about that notice. Then it says if the town opts out to purchase the property, it has 90 days to do so. It also says if the town fails to act within the 120 days, it constitutes a de facto decision to not exercise the right of first refusal. Now, there's a whole section on this that says the proper and complete notice to the town. There's a whole bunch of moving parts that the CPC does not have. I can't myself, I contacted each one of the Board of Selectmen, and I expressed I was uncomfortable with this article going forward. So I'm going to open this up to the board members. There are certain things that need to be, that I could express, but I can't because of the way the situation is. Executive session privilege. However you want to word that. So I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. We'll start with Kathy.
My only question would be regarding this agricultural exemption or taxation break. Isn't there a limit on the number of years? Doesn't it have to be renewed? Or if it's not farmed for, I don't know, 3 years or something, then it reverts back to regular taxation? Is that true?
It has to be renewed, as I understand it, Kathy, every year.
Every year. So it's not a permanent agricultural restriction on the property.
I'm not an attorney, Kathy. I can't answer that question, but that's a good question.
Okay. I think Mr. Giorgio wants to answer that.
John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, that's a 61A restriction on the property that does have to be renewed every year. It's not permanent. It results in a reduction in the taxes paid or owed, I should say. And the chairman has correctly stated the procedure, but I want to emphasize that's only if the property is going to be sold to a private party. That would not prohibit the town from negotiating an agreement with the owner. And as part of that agreement, I'm sure what would happen is we would put in the papers a release from the requirement to provide that notice. The town would waive the notice requirement. So I don't think that 61A status is an impediment if the town wants to proceed with a negotiated purchase of that property directly.
Mary. You're muted, Mary. You're still muted. Okay, you're all set.
Okay, thanks for bearing with me. So I don't see how this board can vote to expend money when the Board of Selectmen has not had its opportunity to determine whether it wants to exercise its right of first refusal. So I understand what Attorney Giorgio was saying, that the town could decide to go forward if it wanted to, but this is the night before town meeting. We're talking about the acquisition of real property. We should have been afforded the opportunity to see the appraisal. If the way the statute reads is that the town, when there's a signed purchase and sale agreement for a bona fide offer for purchase, then the town, the requirement is that the town and multiple different boards within the town are required to receive the notice. There are items which make that notice sufficient and items that make that notice not sufficient. If that notice hasn't even come out yet, how would the town know, how would the Board of Selectmen know whether they thought this was a good deal and was the right way to spend the money for the town? They can make that choice. My point is just that I think this is still too premature. This project has morphed from when it first came to us in October to now, to when it went to the Board of Selectmen. The vote that we have currently on record doesn't match what's in the warrant. So we either have to take a vote to support what's in the warrant or to support something or vote to rescind. I personally don't think we have sufficient information to go forward. I swore an oath, which makes us fiduciaries to the taxpayers of Harwich to spend the CPA money in accordance with the Act. I don't feel voting on this project tonight, the night before town meeting, whether it's $245,000 or $10, I don't feel we have sufficient information. And I think we can let the process that's statutorily required play out. If there's a signed purchase and sale agreement for any of the land that is under a 61A restriction, then the Board of Selectmen should be getting their notice and they should be exercising their right, or their right to waive that right, or their right to assign it to another third party, like a conservation trust. I just don't think we have enough information at this point. And we still haven't seen an appraisal, and we have to do our own due diligence to make sure that we're comfortable that we're spending the money in accordance with the CPA Act and in accordance with state law. And I just don't feel that we can make that decision. I know I can't.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with Mary. I can't possibly vote on this. There is so much more that we don't know than what we do know. It's the night before town meeting. We have no idea whether this is, there's so much we don't know that I feel like it would just be completely irresponsible for me to vote on this tonight with what little now we know, and then ask the townspeople to make a decision tomorrow when obviously they'll have even less information than we have. So I absolutely think we cannot go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a different point of view on this topic. I think it would be irresponsible for us to not approve the expenditure of whatever funds are necessary to execute this. I think this is a bird in the hand and we should go for it. And I think there's a lot of obfuscation going on here, honestly. And I'm not particularly happy about that. I'm not particularly happy about the confusion that has been boiling around this topic since we initially voted on it. I think that my personal opinion is that CPC can vote to approve an expenditure of $360,000 or $245,000, and there's another step that has to be done, which is that before that money can actually be expended, a valid appraisal has to be presented, and the selectmen need to negotiate the actual purchase within mind what the valid appraisal is. I believe we're covered by the initial motion, although I'm not too particularly happy about some of the particulars, and clearly it appears to me that that motion was assembled in some haste, which now various changes have been made and there were defects in the motion apparently that needed to be fixed, aside from what we're talking about here. But I strongly recommend approving, I would say, the revised motion because it's more clear for $245,000 as was sent out. And I hope all my fellow committee members have read that revised motion and the email from Mr. Giorgio explaining his thinking on it at this point. Thank you. Well, let me just finish. I think it's critical that this land be protected and that we take steps now to protect the land and avoid the possibility that other things may happen to it in the future. I think that's critical. And I think it would be a very big shame if we set aside the opportunity we have right now and wait for some future thing to happen, which none of us know what that will be. It'll be another year before we can do this again, and who knows what will happen in the ensuing year. It would be a mistake to pass this opportunity up.
Thank you, John. John, Mr. Giorgio, we're going to listen to the board first. Donna, you have the floor.
Thank you, David. So we were presented an application which we voted on for $360,000 for a acquisition of land that was it was in the range of 31 acres. I have the original application in front of me. And now we're being asked to take this 31 acres, yes, approximately 31 acres. And now we're being asked to take the CPC funding and apply it to a parcel that's 1.17 acres. I do not feel comfortable with moving this forward tonight. I wish that the parties that were involved that made changes from the point that the CPC voted on this had come back to the CPC way ahead and discussed what was being done, given us all the information that we needed and afforded us an opportunity to make a vote based on the facts. I think that we should re-vote it this evening. And unfortunately, it's not because I don't support the project. I will be voting in the negative. And I also would like to say that I really think that any reference to the CPC not doing their job or not supporting this just isn't correct. This is about the process, not about the project that's in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Robert?
Hi, I am very much in support of this project. I always have been. However, as a CPC member, I think it is our requirement to monitor the appraised value versus what's being paid. As I understand it, we cannot pay more than the appraised value. I pulled the assessor's card on this, and if I'm reading it correctly, the current appraised value is $60 for the land. So I don't know how you get from 60 to 250 or whatever. I haven't seen an appraisal or multiple appraisals to justify that. And maybe that's tied in with the agricultural type thing. I'm not really sure. But at this point, I cannot support it because of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Joseph?
Thank you. A quick question on if we rescind this tonight, when's the first time we can look at this again, Dave?
Soon after, well, I made a suggestion to the Board of Selectmen, and maybe this will help in some way. At some point in time in September or October, there may be another special town meeting. That's possible. So I know there may be an election to replace Steve Ford because of his passing. So if there's nothing that precludes anybody to file an early application to the CPC, that could be done the day after town meeting. There's nothing to preclude the chair from putting it on the floor to let the CPC vet it and to have either an approval process before our normal approval process for one application. We have the ability to change that. And that doesn't mean that the October 1st doesn't still apply. All it means is we never had any restrictions. We always said, if you want to come early and make the presentation, and we could act on it for a fall town meeting. I don't know if that helps, though.
Okay, then my only other question is, I was a little confused about the town's initial right of refusal of the parcel itself. Did they utilize that right of refusal, or is that still out there?
I don't know the answer
right?
to that question. I'll ask Chairman Ballantyne if he's on to please to answer that question.
Dave, to my knowledge, there's been no action taken on that.
Thank you, Larry. Does that help, Joe? Your screen's frozen, Joe. Okay, we'll come back to Joe. Mary, go ahead.
Thanks, David. One question through you to Chairman Ballantyne. Did the town even get its notice for the right of first, to exercise its right of first refusal? You would have.
To my knowledge, no.
So if I could just comment, David, briefly, that's the point of the statute. The point of the statute is that the notice goes out and it gives the town and the Board of Selectmen 4 months to do their own vetting of a deal to see if they want to match the bona fide offer for purchase. It's one of the benefits that's been granted to the town by statute when there's an agricultural or horticultural exemption. The town has the right to buy it back. And while yes, it might need to be renewed every year, I believe there's also a limitation in the statute that any sale within 1 year of the taxation. So there's a time limit. If they want to convert it, they'd have to wait out the length of conversion. If my read of the statute is correct, and I don't know if Mr. Giorgio wants to speak to that, but there's a reason that right of first refusal is in the statute. This isn't the last bite at the apple. If there's a bona fide offer for purchase for that land, the seller is required to give the town the right of first refusal and to give them notice. So if there's a purchase and sale agreement out today, and it's rescinded and a new one's made next week, and it's a bona fide offer for purchase, the sale isn't supposed to go through until the town gets its notice and exercises its right of first refusal. They either say, yes, we're going to buy it, or they're going to say, no, we don't want to, or you know what, we're going to assign it to a conservation trust. So I don't believe it's the last bite at the apple, and it just feels very premature from my perspective for us to go forward tonight.
Thank you, Mary. Joe, to try to answer your question, I have DOR's information in front of me, and I'd like to read it to you. It says, requirements for further notice of property owner. The landowner must provide a letter of intent to sell or convert a parcel of commercial, industrial, or let me start over. The landowner must provide a letter of intent to sell or convert a parcel for commercial, industrial, or residential use. This notice must be sent by certified mail or hand-delivered to the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Board of Assessors, and Conservation Commission, and to the State Forester. That's right off the DOR website.
Okay.
Does that help?
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Mr. Giorgio.
Mr. Chairman, I, with all due respect, I think we're getting off the track here because if this land is still in Chapter 61A, Mary is absolutely correct that they have to send, they have to have a signed purchase and sale agreement. They have to send that notice to the town, and we have a right to match the purchase price that's contained in that purchase and sale agreement, assuming it's a bona fide offer. Doesn't mean we get to pick the price or to negotiate the price. We have to pay whatever the price is in that P&S. And I've seen many, many cases where there's been litigation over whether or not the purchase and sale agreement is bona fide, whether the amount of the that's contained in the P&S is actually a bona fide offer at arm's length. So I think the risk you're running here is, yeah, you'll get that notice, but you have no idea what it's going to cost the town to actually exercise that right, not to mention potential legal fees. So you now have a situation, and I would certainly turn it to Mr. Lack, if you'll recognize him, about the appraisal that was conducted. And that forms the basis for the $245,000 price for that parcel. So you do have an opportunity now, tomorrow, to appropriate the funds to advance this negotiation, but please don't rely on the fact that you may or may not get a 61A notice that's going to allow you a reasonable second bite at the apple. That would be my advice, Jim.
Thank you, John. And I understand your point of view, Mr. Giorgio. The problem I'm having with this entire event is it's at the 7th hour. The CPC, to do their due diligence, hasn't had the opportunity to sit down, have a reasonable discussion about the arguments you've heard here tonight. We're being asked to perform here, right now, in a town meeting tomorrow morning. And I find that, anyway, okay. Kathy, you've got the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Bob's comment about looking up something on the assessor's database, which an assessed value is very different from an appraised value. And in addition, Dave, were you not given a couple different appraisal numbers in the last couple weeks?
Yes, I was, but I can't reveal those because they're stamped confidential and they were given to me through executive session.
Correct, but you could assure the Community Preservation Committee that the appraised value was well within the proposed purchase price, correct?
I don't know the answer to that question, Kathy. Mary.
Again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, and I'm not trying to, but we should have had the right to see the appraisal. We extended our executive session as long as we possibly could before the vote because we have to take a vote in open session. And we relied on the fact, at least I think some of the board members probably relied on the fact that there was 31 acres of land and it's now down to 1. But nevertheless, if all of the information isn't out of executive session, how can we possibly vote without the actual knowledge of what's happened? And with all due respect to the comments from Attorney Giorgio, I'm not in no way, shape, or form suggesting that Mr. Locke is going to come up with some crazy number. And yes, I fully understand that the town's right of first refusal is the right to match a bona fide offer for purchase and not to negotiate. That's correct. But if that bona fide offer for purchase fails to go forward in the manner in which it was detailed, and there are changes made, then that's going to precipitate a whole new notice. And I understand Attorney Giorgio's point about having to litigate what a bona fide offer is and what a true value is and what the true purchase price is. But, you know, I'm simply saying that I don't know how we vote for money when you really don't know whether I just think the Board of Selectmen should have been afforded the right to vet the project in the right way. This project has obviously morphed for any number of reasons, and that may be through no fault of any of the people on this phone call. But the fact is, we are sitting here the night before town meeting talking about a land acquisition. It's not just, you know, something simple. It's a land acquisition. We haven't been, the town, I just think we're doing a disservice to the taxpayers to expend this money without doing our full due diligence and without the Board of Selectmen being afforded their statutory right to look at a bona fide offer for purchase. I understand Attorney Giorgio's points, but I guess in this point I disagree. It's one of the reasons that I voted against this in the first place. My board members may remember I asked about this back in the fall, and nothing ever came of my initial question on this chapter. So, you know, I just think we are trying to put a square peg in a round hole at the 11th hour, and it just doesn't feel right. It's taxpayer money we're spending.
Thank you, Mary. Michael, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members, for spending time on this project and process, especially on Friday evening. And thank you, Mr. Giorgio, for your points of clarification, which I think are very important to this decision-making process. I believe that the Real Estate and Open Space Committee sent 2 appraisal summaries to CPC chair. That occurred after the April 22nd executive session of the CPC on this project. In addition, Town Council also received the same appraisal summaries on April 30th. So those appraisal summaries that were sent by the Real Estate and Open Space Committee to CPC chair, those are for your committee to understand the justification for the $245,000 appraised value for Lot G1, because that's what you asked of Elaine and I in your last meeting. So it sounds like you haven't quite received the appraisal summaries. And Mr. Chair, I'm not suggesting that you know, was any in any way, shape, or form mistake, but perhaps just a matter of communication breakdown. You know, the fact remains there have been 2 appraisal summaries sent to the CPC as well as the selectmen via Town Council. So that information has been provided to you as you requested. In terms of the scope of the project changing, I can understand the frustration in the process from what was in the original CPA funding application, and that was explained on April 22nd as well as to why the change in the scope, which really essentially simplified it, streamlined it, when Town Council generated the article that the selectmen accepted and adopted for the warrant. with, I believe, a change in their second open meeting on that subject to change the custody, care, and control from the Conservation Commission to the Board of Selectmen. And I believe that Town Council has further revised the article to be in alignment with the two appraisals. So revising downward the $360,000 amount to $245,000, which is an outcome of the April 22nd meeting that you had. So I think the article as it stands aligns with the appraised value justified by those two appraisal summaries. And Mr. Giorgio, I think, has answered the other questions that have been raised. So I think things are in better shape than have been expressed and can be justified in particular by these two appraisal summaries as to the amount, which ends up saving the town $115,000 by revising downward from $360,000 to $245,000. So I would ask that you reconsider some of the sentiments of voting against this and consider supporting it because of the greater good here that can result in the town acquiring that lot, which will help strengthen the town HCT partnership for the larger effort, which is explained in the italicized portion below the proposed Article 33, which is to help the preservation of the larger property, which will help protect pond water quality, scenic views from the rail trail, and a walking trail destination, as well as many other community benefits. And I'm glad to answer any other questions. So Tom Evans, president of Harwich Conservation Trust, is also here.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, what I want to say to you is I'm looking at two PDFs in front of me, and both say confidential HCT applications. One's for 152 kilobytes, the other is for 416 kilobytes. And if there was a miscommunication, there was a miscommunication. But when I read the document, it says confidential.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, and I understand that. And
so at that point, it is what it is. I can't change that document.
No, well, Mr. Chairman,
they want to revise you something, Michael. The CPC chairman voted for this project.
Mr. Chairman, just a point around
this project up until now. Go ahead, you have the floor, Michael.
Okay, so that's simply a file name for the two appraisal summaries. They're intended for use by the CPC since the conversation that requested them occurred in executive session. So it's your purview how you share it with your committee members since the request came from your committee in executive session.
Mary.
All due respect, I still don't think an appraisal summary is the same as an appraisal. And the fact still remains that we haven't seen it. And if we requested it in an executive session, that session hasn't come out of protection yet, and we're not in executive session tonight to look at them. So, and again, it's the application, we voted on this back in January or February. As soon as it changed, it shouldn't, we always knew that we needed an appraisal. We weren't worried about it because of, or apparently some people weren't worried about it because of the volume. I mean, I'll be clear, I didn't vote for this originally. And I'm still not in favor of it because I don't think it's the last bite at the apple. All due respect to my colleagues. But I also want to say, whose name is on the application? This is strictly an application from the Harwich Conservation Trust. I don't recall this being in the name of the Conservation Commission, and it certainly wasn't in the name of the Real Estate and Open Space Committee. So, as I recall, the town wasn't a party to this because we discussed who would be signing the purchase and sale agreement. Correct?
You're asking me that question, Mary?
Through Mr. Chair, if the chair will allow it.
Yes.
So we never saw a purchase and sale agreement.
The applicant on the Community Preservation Act funding application that you received is the Town Real Estate and Open Space Committee. And a partnering organization, you can look at the application, it says it on the application. And the partnering organization is Harwich Conservation Trust, but I'll let the chair of the Real Estate and Open Space Committee speak to that.
So I'll just speak up that I'm embarrassed for myself that I didn't pick that up because the Real Estate and Open Space Committee is an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen. So,
Michael, you're correct. Michael, you're correct. Mary.
I'm good.
Thank
I
you.
still don't know how to feel.
Donna.
All of this discussion aside, we are now trying to have a discussion about things that we spoke about in executive session, and it is making me extremely uncomfortable. That this is how this is playing out right now. We should not be referring to or discussing things that were discussed in an executive session. And this is part of the whole problem right now. We received an application for 31 plus acres for $360,000. That's what we approved. And now we're being asked to reconsider that. And we have not seen, as Mary stated, and I don't even want to say that this committee requested an appraisal because that was not in an open session. But I will say, if the deal was going to be changed, someone should have realized that a new appraisal was required, not 2 weeks prior to town meeting. That is statutory in the CPC law. So, I mean, I think that we've come to a place where we need to revote this tonight. Every member has to make their own decision, based on the facts that they, that they believe in this case tonight. So I move to revote application OS8, now known as Article 33.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. So I'm going to call for a vote. Is there any discussion?
Wait a second. I've been asking to be recognized for the last 5 minutes, Dave.
I have a motion on the floor, Don, and a second.
You can have comments on it.
From the board members. Elizabeth.
That is not parliamentary procedure. I'm sorry.
Let me try to clarify something. So right now, as I understand it, the only part of this parcel going before a town meeting tomorrow is the 1 acre that we're being asked to pay $245,000 for. And that purchase is supposed to signal to the town that, yippee, we have this great opportunity to buy the rest of the land. Is that what I'm understanding?
Does anybody want to answer that question from the board? John?
I'm
Yes.
not going to answer the question. I don't have an answer to Elizabeth's question, but I want to just amplify the question, I think, which is, I'm not sure what the motion means. We're revoting what? Are we revoting the motion that Mary made in January, I think it was? Is that what you're suggesting? Or are we voting on the motion that is warrant article number 33? Or are we voting on the revised motion that was distributed to us today?
Donna?
Well, first of all, if you look at the warrant article that was sent earlier tonight, it is clear that's what is being bought is parcel 881-G1 for $245,000. It's the one parcel that's 1.17 acres. We originally took a vote, this body took a vote when we voted OS8 application, we voted $360,000. I believe that's the revote that we have to take because that can't move forward.
John, does that help?
So I understand the motion. I'm not going to say it helps.
And Mr. Howell, you are what to the CPC?
Liaison, selectman, and I was asking you to, and I'm advising you that was not parliamentary procedure to blow by somebody requesting to talk before the motion.
You've given me the ability to recognize you because you are a liaison to the CPC. Mr. Howell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I doubt I'm going to sway any votes, but I need to break down a bunch of these things because initially, Donna's right, and a number of other people are right. We have done plenty of deals in the past where we were either majority or minority partner with the Conservation Trust and others. Muddy Creek was one of them that was actually involving the state and the federal government as well as us and them. It might have made you feel a little bit more comfortable as being a minority holder of the overall bog and the attendant parcels, but the Board of Selectmen, I'm not exactly proud of this, and this is a matter of public record, so I can say it. Mr. Ballantyne voted against this, as did Mr. McCaskill, but 3 votes, and that's why I was really interested in talking tonight, were Ed McManus, myself, and Stephen Ford, who really felt strongly that he wanted to protect this area by the purchase. So that was a 3-2 vote in public session. And part of this got messed up because the Board of Selectmen, and I think you need to hear this, voted then and probably will continue to vote to not grant jurisdiction to the Conservation Commission for reasons that boiled down, and I've spoken to their chair also, have boiled down to a lack of faith in what's happened in the past when we've made such purchases where we wanted to have some sort of recreational access to them. I doubt that vote's going to change. The other thing that I can't guarantee is, yeah, we could get a right of first refusal, but where are we going to get the money to actually match that? As John Giorgio pointed out, we have a time frame, and it may not be $245,000. The way the real estate market is right now, it could conceivably be much higher than that, but we need a funding source. Without a funding source, I can guarantee we're not going to be borrowing it in this environment. Without a funding source, we are simply not going to do this. And I can't guarantee you're going to be on a special town meeting because we haven't scheduled a special town meeting. part of the problem here is you got to look inside yourselves, and there's reasons to say no to this. I get it, and I get that. You can come up with reasons to say no. The question is whether you can come up with any reasons to say yes. Because ultimately, if we start, I don't care if anybody thinks that this isn't plausible. If we start driving down a gateway property off of Route 6, and no longer is there not even going to be a bog there, but there's going to be 6 McMansions on a periphery where the upland is, it'll wind up being on us that we wound up spending an hour on figuring out how we didn't have to handle that now. The timing is really of the essence at this point. We have the town meeting tomorrow. There is no guarantee of one in September. And even if there were, I don't know where we'd come up with a funding source. Failing the CPC, the appraisal was because we forced the issue on the board's level, Board of Selectmen, to make this purchase so that it would be totally under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, which selected out this one parcel because it accesses the pond. We weren't really willing to cede this to Conservation Commission for the overall jurisdiction. This got really messed up because it did morph, but it got morphed because of us. All I can say is we did have an appraisal, and I can say, because it wasn't an executive session, that it is $245,000. I know you haven't seen it formally, and you have your own executive session that you need to keep confidential. Ours was not part of that. So with all of that, again, I can't reiterate enough. I also promised Stephen that I would represent this, and I'm doing exactly that now. I don't know you're ever going to have the opportunity to have this conversation again, because I don't think it's going to happen in my gut.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Elizabeth.
So I'm still not getting the gist of this. We're buying 1 acre for the select board. We're not buying any of the other land, so our acre may very well end up being a piece of land next to 6 McMansions. We have no guarantee of that. That makes, it is 12 and 3, 15 hours before town meeting. And we're getting this information now. That's absurd to me. It's absurd to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kathy.
Well, I think by supporting this $245,000 purchase, we're supporting the collaborative effort to protect this land. And when I say collaborative, it's between the town of Harwich, DCR, and HCT. It's not just random.
Thank you, Kathy. Mary.
Point of information, Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm that there's a motion on the floor, and that my understanding of Donna's motion is that an affirmative vote would be a vote to support Article 33 as drafted, and a negative vote would be not to support Article 33 as drafted. Now, my understanding is that CPC funds cannot be expended without an affirmative vote of this board. And the article as reflected in the warrant does not reflect the current affirmative vote that we took back in January or February. So if my understanding is correct, I would just want to be clear. Donna's motion is an affirmative vote would be a yes vote to support in favor of Article 33 as redrafted by town council, and a negative vote would be not to support Article 33 as redrafted by town council. And I think, I just want to make that clear for everyone on the board.
That's not really correct based upon rules of order. I think Kathy, I'm sorry, was it Donna who made the motion? The real motion that should be made here is a motion to reconsider your prior vote. And if that motion passes, then this recommendation is back on the floor for the CPC to vote on. Either you're going to support the project as revised or you're not. But procedurally, the first order of business is whether you want to even reconsider the prior vote. So that would be my recommendation for the motion.
So, Attorney Giorgio, if I may, just a question.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio, for clarifying that. Now, I want to go to Donna. Donna.
I mean, I'm happy to change the motion to reconsider the vote that we took on application OS8. But that vote was for $360,000 for 31 plus acres. So I think that's where we need to start. And there's no way that that can move forward because that's now not what the article is that's going to be considered tomorrow, nor is it what it is in the warrant that everybody on town meeting floor has. And I appreciate Selectman Howell's comments. I would implore the Board of Selectmen, if they're going to make decisions and changes, to come back to the CPC with those and have us work together, not the night before town meeting. And I also want to point out that there are 3 select board members on this call tonight. And I hope that you posted a meeting for that.
Mr. Chairman, that's not exactly correct either. The motion to reconsider, if it is voted, would give the CPC an opportunity to vote either the same recommendation or a new recommendation. It would be whatever motion is made after the motion to reconsider passes. So we've got to be very careful here that we follow proper procedure. The other thing I want to point out is if the CPC does nothing tonight and doesn't change its recommendation, town meeting may vote for a lower amount than what's stated in the warrant. Even though the CPC originally recommended 360,000, town meeting, that's the one thing town meeting can do, is to vote a lower amount.
Okay, where we are right now, we have a motion and a second on the floor. And I understand exactly what Mr. Giorgio is saying. The vote needs to be to rescind the previous vote.
No, it's a motion to
reconsider, David.
Right, motion to reconsider.
I'm going to rescind my original motion. Whoever made the second should remove their second.
I'll rescind my second.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to move to reconsider the vote on OS8. That was the application number.
And I'll renew my second for a question.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Discussion.
Question, David. So just for a point of order, the vote in the affirmative on the motion for reconsideration is simply allowing us a second vote to determine whether we are supporting or not supporting another motion to go before town meeting tomorrow. Correct? Through you to Mr. Giorgio.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second. There is discussion. Is there any other discussion amongst the board?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Jan?
Donna, your motion is to reconsider the motion of OS8, period?
Reconsider the OS8 application and the motion that we took on that.
And Mary seconded it, Jan. Okay, again, any discussion? Elizabeth? No, you're all set? All right, the board's ready for a vote. All those in favor, roll call vote. We'll start with John.
John Ketchum, aye.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Harder, aye.
Joseph.
John Parlett, aye.
Robert Doan, aye.
Donna,
Donna Kalanick, aye.
Kathy,
Catherine Green, nay.
Mary,
Mary Maslowski, aye.
and David Nixon, aye. Okay, so we've dispensed with that. Next.
7, 2, 1.
Did you get that, Jan? Okay. John?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a suggestion. If Mr. Lack is willing to, we have a couple of options here. We could screen share the summary appraisal so the board can look at it, or it can be sent to you and you have a meeting posted for tomorrow morning. You could adjourn till tomorrow morning, give you all a chance to review the appraisal, and then make an informed vote tomorrow morning. Or if you're comfortable, look at it now, have Mr. Lack go through it, and then the board could vote. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio. Is there a motion? Robert?
If I can, through the chair, can we have Mr. Lack review the appraisals?
Okay. Michael? Can you screen share the appraisals? And I hope this isn't in violation of...
It's not.
Okay, thank you.
I think that it's a awkward position because you requested the information in executive session. It was provided to you, but for some reason, committee members weren't able to review it. So do I understand correctly that you would like to review it as a group on your screens now?
That was the recommendation of town council.
And Mike, I think you have the ability, the Conservation Trust commissioned that appraisal, correct? That's the appraisal that you commissioned. You can certainly decide to share it tonight if you, without violating the open meeting.
Okay. One of the appraisals, I was able to secure the permission from the property owner, the Jenkins family, to share that appraisal. So do you want me to share that? I'll share that, what was sent, I believe, from the Real Estate Open Space Committee to the CPC chair. So I will pull that up.
Hold on for a second.
Turn my camera off.
Hold on
I
for a
don't want to
second.
review this appraisal during this meeting. This is not proper.
Mary?
My only comment is, it seems like people had made their decisions. I don't know that looking at an appraisal the night before town meeting is going to change any of our minds that have decided. That's my own 2 cents, and I don't want to see Mr. Locke have any bad blood with any of the people he's trying to put a deal together with, because I don't think the deal ends if we don't vote this money today. So I'm being cautious when I say that, because it's not that I'm not in favor of the project. I have been not in favor of the process of this project and the way that it's come before us and the way it's morphed at the very last minute. And as I said before, I'm not putting blame on any one or any 2 or any 10 people for that. It's the facts are the facts. We are here the night before town meeting. And Mr. Locke, you seem uncomfortable in sharing that right at this moment. So I'm going to be honest and tell you that looking at that appraisal on your screen or on my computer screen tonight isn't going to change my mind. Because to me, vetting an appraisal and looking at the information requires more than a half an hour worth of time on a Friday night before town meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I just want to put it out there before you do something that you're uncomfortable with.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, the Jenkins family did give permission to share it, and the reason why it was shared is because it was requested by your committee in executive session. So if you feel that you would like to review it in your executive session tomorrow morning, that is an option, as Mr. Giorgio also mentioned in his with his among his suggestions. Alternatively, I believe the CPC chair has seen them, as well as the select board members, because town council also asked for them, and they were readily provided on April 30th. But it sounds like it wouldn't quite change your position at this point in time. And thank you for being straightforward. I really would love to make this work for the ability for the voters to have their say tomorrow. And if your committee can reach a place based on the information that has been clarified tonight, that would be welcome. If you cannot, I fully respect your decision, and I appreciate your time on this process. So I'm willing to answer any more questions to try and advance the project. I will, if I may, Mr. Chair, may I offer one more clarification?
Michael, you have the floor.
Okay. There's been reference to $360,000 for 31 acres outlined in the application. If you look at the application, it is not structured that way. The way it is structured is that always lot G1 was to be purchased fee simple. That means purchased outright by the town, and there would be a conservation restriction held by the town on the remaining parcels that would be purchased by HCT. As I explained to your committee, the reason that changed after you received the application is because HCT received information from the property owner that they could no longer profitably farm the bogs. And so therefore, their last harvest season was in October 2020. That happened to be the third week of October, which was after the October 1st deadline for the application proposal that was submitted by the Real Estate and Open Space Committee. As I also explained to your committee, the town council had restructured the warrant article language to reflect what you see today, with the exception of the most recent revision provided by town council to revise downward the price from 360,000 to 245,000, with only a fee simple purchase of lot G1 by the town.
Michael, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there. We have already had this discussion.
I know.
And it's been revised many times, and that's the issue. It hasn't come back to the CPC for a vote. And on the hour that it is, we're being asked to take an action.
You were told this information on April 22nd.
When was the application put into place, Michael?
October 1st. Right.
Moving on. Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm being such a pill about this, but we just happened at the assembly this week to have training from the county attorney about open meeting law. Many rules of which we're breaking right now, but I'm not the one breaking them, the select board are, so that's their problem. I just cannot believe we are discussing this the night before town meeting. If it's that important to the select board that the CPC passes this, then they have 3 months to get it together, do it correctly, and then we can hold a special meeting in the fall. But to ask us to violate everything that we're supposed to be doing as stewards of the town's money, this isn't our money. This is all my neighbors' money, everyone in Harwich's money. And I took an oath to take care of that money and spend it wisely. I cannot do that tonight because we don't know everything. And I think it's heinous that we are being put in this position at this hour. So if it's that important, you can bring everything to us and have a special town meeting in the fall. I love this project. I do not want to see a Lowe's at exit 10, but this is not the way to do it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, Donna, you have the floor.
I am not comfortable myself, one committee person. I do not want to review this appraisal in this meeting right now. I would just respectfully ask that you take a show of hands of who wants to see it and who doesn't, because I don't want to do this right now, and I don't think that we should.
Thank you, Donna. Is there any other, from the board members, is there any other discussion?
Dave, can you hear me?
Joe, you've got the floor.
Dave, I apologize, Dave. I lost my computer, so I'm on the phone now because I've been away, for a while here, and the computer just went off after being on this phone call for 1 hour. And very simply put, I agree with the original comments of multiple people here, including Donna, that I just am not comfortable with the process and procedure of what's transpired. And I don't think it's very common that this kind of thing happens. And I can't comfortably, in good conscience, vote for this thing tonight. I just can't.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Does anybody in the board want to make a motion?
I move. Well, I want to make sure I'm making the right motion. So I think it's that it's a move to vote on Article 33 as proposed, and what we received at about 4:17 this afternoon from Attorney Giorgio. And if that motion's wrong, I can certainly be corrected.
I'm happy to second that in the interest of clarification.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and a second. Discussion.
It seems to me,
Elizabeth.
sorry, it seems to me like it should be, we move it simple, we vote to remove the CPC article from the town warrant.
Right.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on, everybody. John Giorgio, you have the floor.
I would respectfully suggest that, given the tenor of what I'm hearing, the motion should be to not move to not recommend the Article 33 appropriation to town meeting. Move not to recommend.
Thank you, John.
I move not to recommend.
Wait.
That still is on the warrant.
On the
doesn't it?
floor, please.
So I'll rescind my second. Point of order, Mr. Chair. I will rescind my second if Donna wants to correct her motion to what Mr. Giorgio suggested.
Okay, I rescind the motion that I made. Mary rescinded her second, which is really why we shouldn't be doing this right now, by the way. And now I can't even like put together the motion we're supposed to put together. I move to
Not to support.
not to
What was
support. Yeah, go ahead, Mary. You make the motion.
I'll make the motion not to support Article 33 as printed in the warrant.
Second.
It's not printed in the warrant.
I believe it is.
Okay, all right, okay. I got it.
So
The warrant, we got it at 3:00 today.
So what's printed in the warrants, Attorney, through Mr. Chair, may I ask a question, Town Council? We have a motion and a second for discussion.
I'm muted. I apologize. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so through you to Attorney Giorgio, if we vote to rescind our support of Article 33 as printed in the warrants, is that what your recommendation was? Or your proposed offer for a motion?
Mr.
John, you have
Chair,
the floor.
if I may, and I think Jan may be taking the minutes. Is that correct, Jan?
Yes.
Okay, so-
Actually, no. What you had said was
So
that
I'm
we should
gonna
move to not recommend Article 33.
Right, so I'm gonna read a suggested motion, and if Mary likes that, she can say so moved, and somebody else can second it, and then you can vote. So I move that the CPC vote not to recommend the acquisition of parcel 81-D1 as proposed in Article 33 of the warrant.
So moved.
Second for discussion.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Who seconded it?
I seconded it for the purpose of discussion. Does that mean it stays on the warrant and goes before the town tomorrow, just without our recommendation? Or does it remove it completely?
I'm sorry. Mr. Giorgio.
Well, of course, you cannot remove an article from the warrant. That stays on the warrant. However, as I said in my email with the revised motion that I sent yesterday, I said that town meeting cannot act on an appropriation of CPA funds without a positive recommendation from the CPC.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to assume that if this motion passes, that tomorrow the moderator will ask for a motion from the Finance Committee to indefinitely postpone Article 33. That's what I would anticipate is going to happen. That requires a simple majority vote, and if it's indefinitely postponed, then we're done with Article 33 for the town meeting tomorrow.
And what if the Finance Committee doesn't vote to indefinitely postpone it?
Well, I believe you have a bylaw provision that says if no positive motion is made, then the moderator turns to the Finance Committee for a motion to indefinitely postpone.
That's right.
And since the moderator cannot accept a motion, a positive motion, without a recommendation of the CPC, then a positive motion cannot be considered tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio. Elizabeth, are you all set? Mary, you have the floor.
I just want to be clear so that everybody knows what they're voting. Based on the way the motion was framed, a positive vote is not to support. A negative vote would be essentially to support. So a positive motion is not to support the article in the warrant. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on how the vote, what the vote means.
Okay, is there any other discussion from the board members? We're going to take a roll call vote. We're going to start with John Ketchum.
John Ketchum, nay.
Elizabeth Hager.
Aye.
Robert Doan.
Aye.
Donna Kelnick.
Donna Kelnick, aye.
Joe McFarland.
Joe McFarland, aye.
Mary Mosowski.
Mary Maslowski, aye.
And David Nixon, aye.
Nope, Catherine.
You missed Kathy Green.
Kathy, I apologize. Kathy Green.
Catherine Green, nay.
I'll pay for that one. Okay, the vote has been taken, and that concludes our business for tonight's meeting.
Move to adjourn.
There will be no meeting of this board tomorrow. That meeting is canceled.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. John Ketchum.
John Ketchum, aye.
Kathy Green.
Aye.
Robert Doan.
Robert Doan, aye.
Elizabeth Hardy.
Aye.
Donna Kelnick.
Donna Kelnick, aye.
Mary Mislowski.
Mary Maslowski, aye.
Joe, if you're still there. He's gone. Okay. That's a vote. David Nixon, aye. Have a good evening, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
Conference is no longer being